Hey guys, this is a review of the Infinity Mice Shogun. This pad is in collab with an Overwatch player, The Real Kenzo, who mainly plays Widow and is probably most infamous for his videos where he kills streamers all the time. First off, I'm going to talk about the build quality itself. The pad does ship flat, but it somehow doesn't lie flat. Luckily, it's near the top left corner, so it doesn't really affect performance when I use it. The actual build of the pad is really solid. It's not perfect because there is some fraying in the stitching after a week of use, but the stitching is flush with the surface, so you won't be feeling it when you do large mouse movements, especially vertically. The surface itself is very well made. It glides consistently, no problems with humidity, and the structure is not flimsy at all. I'm especially impressed with the base because it sticks like glue to my table and doesn't budge at all. I did get the larger version, so I can't say for the one that's a bit smaller, but this base is quite nice. Now I'm going to move on to the surface itself, which is extremely smooth. It reminds me of the esports Tiger Neon smoothness, but not as muddy, and the surface feels like the Lamzu Energen where it's not abrasive at all. This is due to the below surface stitching, and I reckon more companies should start doing this, though that would also make every pad kind of the same feeling wise, to be honest. Anyways, the surface is super smooth, and even though they state that the Shogun is controlled, it's a pad that has very little friction if you don't press down on the mouse a lot. So this actually played more like a balance pad rather than controlled, and it's only when you press down the mouse that you feel the friction more. Because of this, issues that control pads have, like ease to micro adjust and tracking where glass pads usually do better at, are not present on the Shogun. Micro adjustments feel great with the initial movements of the mouse requiring little effort and the pad tugging less when you have to track a person. The surface really does add to how well this performs because it's sweat resistant, which is strange to talk about with the pad. With other pads, whether they're glass, cloth, speed or controlled, whenever my forearm has sweat on it, the pads will somewhat stick to my arm to some extent. Using an arm sleeve is an option, but I don't like having one on, especially in the summer where I'm already sweating my balls off, and taking the arm sleeve off after a couple of hours of use just feels so bad. Another pad that also works well if you have sweaty hands and arms in my experience is the Spire Daru, but it's not something that I've seen a lot, and using the Shogun was a pleasure. Last thing is the design. I don't mind it, especially with the samurai theme, but I do prefer something other than red because it's just overused at this point. Usually you would associate red as the color of armor when you think about samurais, mostly from the color being used for some of the more famous samurais in medieval Japan. I'd just like to see some other color with it so you won't end up having a bunch of red pads. Overall, this pad is really nice, and I would get this if I was looking for a control pad that's a little bit more flexible, but I think the Spire Loki or the MPC 450 from Endgame Gear would be better for you and your wallet if you were looking for something a little faster. AT.